First off, I want to thank the Army Corps for reaching out and asking us to put this together. When we got the call a couple weeks ago, maybe last month, I unfortunately was, I'm not sure, Miss Briggs. You know, depending on what's going on with the ice, we might not be able to accommodate. But it's been light so far, and we're in port, so I'm very happy to be able to be with you guys today to talk a little bit about the Coast Guard Cutter Mackinaw, some of our missions, and what it's like for some of our crew members living aboard. So kind of the theme I'm going with is going to be just a virtual tour of the ship, and we will touch on some of the missions that we go through. So Ms. Briggs, we could move on to the next slide. The first couple slides are going to be pretty informational, but I do promise there's some cool pictures coming on later. At a glance, however, our ship is 240 feet overall with a beam of about 60 feet. That places us in about the upper middle range in terms of size for Coast Guard cutters across the fleet, with the largest ships being over 400, but most of them are much smaller than us. So we're definitely in the upper middle in terms of length overall. Our propulsion system here on Mackinaw is unique to the Coast Guard. We have twin ABB Azipod units that throw about 4,500 horsepower each. So for those engines, or propulsion units rather, it helps for you guys to think about a traditional twin screw vessel, 2 propellers, 2 shafts. The difference being that ours are able to spin through 360 degrees. So we're able to throw propelling water in any direction that we choose, and we have independent control over those engines, over those propulsion units. We do not have a rudder on board, so we are physically maneuvering the ship with the azimuthing azipods in a similar way to some tractor tugs and offshore supply vessels that you might see down in the Gulf of Mexico, for example. We do have a single bow thruster up forward that helps us maneuver in and around shoal water, in and out of port, or up against aids to navigation. Just a little bit of perspective, our horsepower we got back, you have 2 Azipods, 4,500 horsepower each. That's about half the horsepower that the Paul R. Tregurtha is able to produce. But they have also got 800 feet on us. So we get a little bit more bang for our buck when it comes to the propulsion plant on board. We're also equipped with a fully dynamic positioning capable suite that again is more similar to what you might see on a offshore supply vessel holding station off of an oil rig. We have that ability because we need to position aids to navigation, and without the computer's ability to hold our position, we would have a very difficult time positioning those aids. It's a lot easier. We're able to isolate different axis of motion, whether it's going ahead or astern, swaying port or starboard, or spinning our heading around. The computer is able to isolate each one of those axes, and that helps us greatly when we are maneuvering close aboard into an unfamiliar port or around aids to navigation. That's one of our missions we'll discuss in a minute. Our crewing, we are optimally manned, which means the Coast Guard has given us just enough members to effectively complete the job. We've got 10 officers aboard with about 46 enlisted. I am one of the officers, the Assistant Operations Officer, Lieutenant Junior grade. We are a pretty tight-knit crew. We do a lot of things together, especially when we get underway for breaking ice. We'll spend a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks out offshore supporting the commerce and one another. So we have some pretty good morale evenings on board, and the whole families here in Sheboygan, where we're home ported, are all very close together. So while we are optimally manned, we might wish we had a few more bodies for a certain couple of things. We have no problem accomplishing our mission, and we're very tight-knit because of that. Our cruising speed is about 13 knots. We can go a little faster, but that's typically what we'll plan for if we're in open waters. And we can be out underway for about 21 days without a resupply. And our limiting factor would be consumables. We're talking food and things like that. We've got enough fuel, our engineers tell me, to make it a little bit farther than that. But for endurance in terms of what we're eating and what we're consuming on a daily basis, it's about 21 days. So Ms. Briggs, we can transition over and I'll talk about our chain of command. So this is the basic command structure that we employ here on board. Obviously up at the top we have our fearless leader, the commanding officer, Commander Kristen Sarmgard. She reported with me back in June, and she took command from Commander Stone, the previous commanding officer. What's cool about Commander Sarmgard, she's got a ton of experience both in the Aton community and in the Great Lakes community. As a she previously served aboard the Coast Guard cutter Hollyhawk down in Port Huron. She is also the first female commanding officer of the Coast Guard cutter Mackinaw, so we are very grateful to have her on board. She is assisted by the executive officer directly below her in the chain of command, Lieutenant Commander Jacob Lohman. He assists her in overseeing the execution of the daily mission and ensuring discipline throughout the vessel. Off to the side there, we're also very lucky to have a command Master Chief Petty Officer. You typically don't see Master Chief Petty Officers aboard ship all that often. So having him here, Master Chief Geigel, brings a wealth of experience and assistance to us in terms of the experience that he's had in the Coast Guard. And his primary duty as the Command Master Chief is to advise the command upon matters of personnel and kind of that deck plate, what's going on with our crew members, and what are some things that the command might be missing due to the structure of the chain of command. Below the XO, we have our 3 departments on board. The department head for the deck department is the first lieutenant, and deck department is responsible for maintaining the exterior of the ship. They're the ones that are be doing the chipping. They're the ones doing the painting. They break the ice off the hull. If we take some spray out there that freezes up, they're the ones that work and service the ATIS navigation down the buoy deck and assist with mooring and unmooring, as well as staffing our small boat. We really wouldn't be able to do the mission that we do without the hard work of the members of the deck department. We also have the engineer officer who oversees the engineering department. That is a more traditional inside the skin of the ship, making sure that the piping, the wires, the old adage is keep the fuel in and the water out. So our engineering department does a great job doing that. What is uniquely challenging for our engineers is our propulsion plant. Because we have those azipods that I mentioned, it's not conventionally propelled with a diesel engine spinning a shaft. The engines we have on board provide electrical power to the azipod unit. So it's actually all electricity that spins our propellers, which makes it a challenging and also rewarding experience for those guys over in the engineering department. And our final department over in operations department. So that's me, the assistant operations officer. I work underneath my boss, Lieutenant Russell, the operations officer. And when you think about operations in the Coast Guard, we do the rest. So we're not out there on deck handling lines or working buoys. We're not down below transferring fuel and staffing the engineering plant. We're doing the rest of the stuff. So our probably main goal would be navigation. We staff the bridge and make sure that we're prepared for our trips. We have all the necessary things we need to get out there and safely navigate the waters of the Great Lakes. But in addition to that, we also are the parent department for the support functions on board the vessel. So our galley department that cooks our food and prepares the meals for us and makes sure that the ship is appropriately sanitized. Those guys also fall under the operations department, as well as any administrative needs. Those are taken by operations department, as well as supply and medical. And that's kind of a general overview about who we've got on board. So just one more slide without a picture. and then we'll be able to move right along. And we won't be on this one for too long. Our two primary missions are obviously icebreaking. We are a red ship, so our primary goal is to break ice. But we were also designed in the form of the seagoing buoy tenders, so we are able to serve as floating aids to navigation as well. Those two missions take up most of our time that we spend operationally away from the pier. We can move along this Briggs, and I will get into icebreaking. This is really our bread and butter. This is what we do. This is really why we're here. Other ships on the lakes are ice capable, and our Canadian friends help us out a bit. But in terms of the American side of the lakes, icebreaking, we are the biggest, most effective asset. As we'll get into in a couple of slides, other units on the Great Lakes are capable of doing aids to navigation and light icebreaking. We are the United States Coast Guard's largest icebreaking asset on the Great Lakes. So what you see in this picture is something that we'll do every night. So in addition to getting out there and creating tracks and maintaining tracks, grooming turns for the bigger ships to be able to get through, in lieu of tying up at a pier or anchoring out for the night if there's no projected traffic coming through, we'll just go ahead and get ourselves stuck. So what this picture is us getting underway from being hove to in the ice, as we call it. Being an icebreaker with a very capable propulsion plant, we get ourselves stuck at night. It allows us to stand down from the traditional bridge watch and just have a couple of people up to make sure we're not moving. So if we are, we've got to get the rest of the crew out and working. But it gives us a good opportunity to take a break at night. The way we break ice is actually pretty interesting. So as we can move on to our next slide here, this is another thing that we do with ice breaking. The direct assist. So this is a photo of the motor vessel H. Lee White. I don't know how old this picture is, but this is a great example of what we do. As you can see, the H. Lee White appears to be stopped, making no way. They are beset. So what we will do is we will pretty much just do a donut around them and try to loosen up some of that ice. Because we've got the azimuthing thrust azipod units. Oh, excuse me. I'm joined right now by Commander Kristen Saramgard, Commanding Officer of the Coast Guard Cutter Mackinaw.
Hello.
Got about 65 folks on here, Captain.
Oh, wow.
We're just getting started with the program here.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, thanks for being interested in Mackinaw, and I'm sure that Pat here is doing a great job telling you all. I got off a phone call pretty quick, and I got to go to another one, but I just wanted to step up here and say hello. So.
All right. Well, thank you very much for stopping by, Captain. I really
Absolutely.
appreciate it. So with our icebreaking, how we'll assist a beset vessel, because of our azimuthing thrust azipods that we can spin through 360 degrees, one of the best ways that we can free this vessel is we'll actually point our azipods athwart ships, so throwing water off the port beam and the starboard beam, making no way fore or aft. And what that allows us to do is blow a whole bunch of water both towards and away from the vessel. Mostly that is enough to free a ship that's beset, and that's kind of not the traditional drive into it, break it with the bow, back down and ram. We are able to use our screws to chew up some of that ice and blow water in any direction that we choose. And that is typically how we will attempt to free some of these ships. The rule of thumb for us is get as close as you can, but no closer than you need to when we're helping these boats. Moving on from ice breaking, our other primary mission is servicing aids to navigation. So Ms. Briggs, we can shift right over. So this photo, what you're seeing here is the middle of a standard buoy evolution. You'll notice that we have that red buoy there sitting on the deck. You might be able to see that we actually have the headache ball, the crane, is attached to the buoy. And this is what we'll do in the fall and again in the spring as part of Operation Fall Retrieve and Operation Spring Restore. The aids to navigation on the Great Lakes are of utmost importance during the spring, summer, and fall navigation seasons, because when we are able to have our summer hulls, our big buoys, our buoys we're not concerned about getting damaged by ice. The salties that come through have a lower pilotage requirement than they otherwise would have if the buoys are not in place. Aids to navigation are great. Every mariner will tell you that if you got a good buoy that's appropriately watching properly and on station, you feel pretty confident. And that's our goal here on the Mackinaw, as well as breaking ice to facilitate that commerce. We also like to keep the big girls off the beach by having our buoys watching properly, winking and blinking correctly. It is a very dangerous evolution, however. As we hook into it with the crane, the ship is essentially anchored to the seafloor by our crane, which extends about 60 feet up off of the buoy deck. So that puts us in a pretty precarious position with considering stability of the vessel. So once we get that buoy on deck, as we ship to the next slide, we try to get it into the chain stopper. This is where we will reeve that chain and get it down set in there so that we have more positive control over the buoy that we are working. Once we get the chain in the chain stopper, we feel pretty confident about ourselves, and we feel like we've reached a point that is a little bit safer. We can kind of take a breath, take stock of what we got going on, and continue with the evolution. Thank you, BM3. We got a ice brief happening right now, so apologize for that. If we shift over to our next slide, we just have another part of the buoy evolution. This is our in-haul winch that we use to reel in the chain. So once we get the buoy on deck and the chain in the chain stopper from the previous slide, we'll disconnect the chain from the buoy and reel it in on the in-haul. And this is where we'll be able to do our work on the buoy, get the sinker, the concrete sinker up off the bottom, and go from there, whether we're removing the buoy for the season or simply replacing the large summer buoy with a more subdued, hardier, sturdier ice buoy. Moving on from aids to navigation, we've got one more with the next slide here. This is the view that the crane operator has from their crane cab. You can see in the foreground, I got some windshield wipers there to help keep them clean and dry so that he sees what's going on. But the guys on deck will be giving signals to the crane operator, who operates not just the crane, but also the in-haul winch and any other auxiliary winches that we have there on the buoy deck. This picture was taken a couple of days ago. This buoy typically sits, I forget if the 03 is in Northern Huron or Michigan, but these buoys are very important for the NOAA to accurately predict weather on the lakes. So they always tell us get them in as soon as you can and take them out as late as you need to. Once we get them out of the water, they're safe and not going to get damaged over the winter season. Moving on to our secondary missions, I'll touch on a little bit as we move to the next slide. Law enforcement. We are not the primary law enforcement asset on the Great Lakes. That responsibility is typically performed by some of our small boat stations. However, we do maintain a fully qualified boarding team if we do need to conduct operations over, say, the 4th of July for, an Operation Dry Water type of deal, looking for boaters under the influence, and trying to keep people safe that way. Another one, Coast Guard, we are search and rescue. We have had, over the winter navigation season, a Coast Guard cutter in a higher readiness status all winter long. We call it Search and Rescue Guard, SAR Guard, ever since the Edmund Fitzgerald went down and there was not a Coast Guard cutter in a high enough readiness status to respond quickly to that disaster. So in response to that, we have cutters all winter long ready to get underway within 12 or even lower than that hours, or even fewer hours if the storm is projected to be very bad. And that is one of the things that we do here on the Mackinaw. Typically, we will cover Lake Huron. We've also been known to cover Lake Michigan or even Lake Superior from time to time, depending upon the material readiness of some of our other cutters. If they had a engineering casualty or they're unable to get underway for whatever reason, they'll shift us around to maintain that search and rescue guard, so that there is a Coast Guard asset now ready to respond. And again, this was in response to the loss of the Edmund Fitzgerald. Our tertiary mission is on the next slide there. We have one other mission that we operate, and we're a cargo ship. Well, not a container ship. Not quite. If we move along, we don't carry containers, we don't bring taconite, we don't bring coal, but what we do bring, if you check out the next slide, is we do Christmas trees. Every December, we take on a load of cargo down to Chicago, and we bring them to the pier there, the Navy Pier, and they're donated to very needy families down in Chicago. Move on to the next slide. We have about 1,200 Christmas trees that we load every winter, and it is a pretty big evolution there. On the left there, that's a quick little plug. That's my roommate, Lieutenant Junior Grade Sagan. Very cool dude, engineering department. So we do butt heads a little bit, but we do get along. And if you shift over to the next slide, you'll see it's pretty much all hands on deck as we move along. We've got 1,200 trees there packed on the stern. We do secure them for sea, and we do make sure that they're all set to go. And if we move one more slide, we drop them off in Chicago. So this next slide here is a photo of us delivering the Christmas trees to the Chicago-based Marine Safety Unit. They helped us out this year in a more subdued than a typical year due to the COVID. We had these guys helping us out, and it was awesome to see Coast Guard and Coast Guard working to deliver some trees to some needy families. As an icebreaker 8-ton unit, we don't typically get to interact with the public all that often. We are familiar with giving tours and attending festivals, but in terms of directly doing an assigned mission, we really get a kick out of being able to support these Christmas trees. And we're not just making a trip to Chicago for fun. We work the Christmas tree vessel into our scheduled AIDS navigation run to service the AIDS down by the Chicago area. Moving right along, I'll give you a quick informational slide here on the next one, which talks about our typical underway routine. So depending upon what operations are going on, this can change around a little bit, but typically they'll announce reveille on the vessel around 06:30, with breakfast being served at around 7. Depending upon what mission we're doing, we typically try to be started up by about 8 o'clock. So whether that's getting underway from the pier, whether that's getting underway from anchorage, whether that's servicing our first aid to navigation of the day, we typically like to kick that off around 8 o'clock, eat lunch around 11. We strike 8 bells at noontime in the traditional change of watch. We'll also test our alarms and whistles. And then in the afternoon, we'll get right back at it, whatever mission we're doing, whether we're servicing some more aids, breaking some more ice, or just transiting to our next location. We'll then eat dinner, and 1900 evening reports, that's a muster of the ship. We make sure every day that we've still got everybody on board. We haven't lost anybody. We take accountability here at night, and that's also where we'll pass the plan for the next day. What some people call it the best part of the day happens around 23:15 when CS2 prepares the midnight meal for those folks standing the watch from midnight to 4 o'clock in the morning. So now as we continue along, I'll just take us briefly through a few ship's spaces. This photo was taken a couple of days ago from the pier here in Sheboygan. So the first thing I want to show you guys in the next slide is just a typical passageway aboard the cutter. This is what our passageways look like. Each door is a stateroom. But something that I'd like to draw your attention to is that that orange fire hose down about the middle of the passageway. We have over 20 firefighting stations on board the Mackinaw, and that's important because when we're underway, we need to be prepared to respond to any emergency. There's no fire department in the middle of Lake Superior. We've got to handle that stuff ourselves. So each fire station has about 100 feet of hose, and the reason for that is so we can take a hose from somewhere and be able to reach another hose station if that one was blocked by the casualty we are fighting. In from the passageway, if we move to the next slide, this is an example of a typical stateroom. This is actually my stateroom. They're all double racks with the exception of one berthing area that has room for 4 personnel. What's really nice about the Cutter Mackinaw is that because she was laid down relatively recently in terms of other Coast Guard assets, we don't have the typical berthing area problems that some vessels that were laid down back in the days of single gender ships. So because we have racks for 2, we can accommodate males, females, in pretty much any number, which is very good. And as we build new ships, look for this to be the more typical design moving forward. Instead of those larger 20 or 30 person berthing areas, look for smaller berthing areas from the Coast Guard moving forward. If you got that eagle eye, one of the earlier points of contention between myself and my roommate, Lieutenant Junior Grade Sagan, is that he is a New Jersey resident, so he's a fan of the New Jersey Devils. As you can see from my 2019 playoff rally towel, I am a Boston guy, so we get into it a little bit, but it's pretty harmonious in the stateroom. Moving right along, the next slide here shows our laundry on board. And getting back to damage control, this is one of the more common spaces where aboard ship you will see a fire. And that's due to the lint trap and the excessive use. So we ask our members to label where their clothes are. That way we have accountability on whose belongings are where. We can move our shipmates' stuff along if they've got to go to watch and forget about it in the dryer or the washing machine. And also to ensure that they are properly cleaning the lint traps to prevent those kind of casualties. We typically are able to get through. There's not usually long lines for laundry as we're going through. Moving right along, our next slide will show you all of the weapons we have on board. Well, not quite. That's just the door. I'm not going to be able to show you guys what's beyond that door, but that is our armory. So that's where we keep our weapons that we maintain aboard the cutter. And we'll bring those along when we do any sort of a law enforcement activity. Next slide, we'll get into the meat and potatoes, if you will, of the ship, the crew mess. Those X's do not mark the spot. Those are reserved for the social distancing we're trying to implement here to mitigate the spread of COVID-19. But as you can see, we've got tables for the enlisted members. as well as a TV there in the back, coffee maker. As we move along, we've got the next slide here is where our chief petty officers eat lunch. We are very fortunate here on board Mackinaw to have great senior enlisted leadership. When those guys make it up to E7, E8, E9, they've really got a huge wealth of experience. And in addition to getting their own place to eat lunch, this is also where if anybody has questions, comments, concerns, they want a little bit of mentorship, our chiefs on board do a great job about providing that sort of experience-based leadership to all of our members. And we really are grateful to have them on board. Moving along, we got the officers' mess called the ward room aboard Coast Guard cutters. This is where the commissioned officers and the warrant officers will eat lunch and eat dinner and eat breakfast, eat all our meals. It's also a conference room, so any sort of distinguished guests we might have aboard, or any sort of visitors or presentations for a small group of people, qualification boards if somebody's getting ready to get qualified to perform a new duty at a watch station. Typically they'll hold that in the ward room because it is the officer space, and it's a nice lounge for where we have those discussions. Continuing with the theme of food, I snapped a quick photo of culinary specialist third class Abney the other day, preparing a delicious meal for us on board. He's been with us here for a few years, getting ready to transfer out this summer. We are very excited whenever he's got the duty for cooking. The next slide is just a quick peek at the serving line as we move along. That's typically where the food will be placed after it's been prepared, and the crew members will step up and take their order. Moving outside the skin of the ship, the next photo is a picture of our ground tackle. We've got 2 anchors on board, 9 shots of chain on each. Each shot is 90 foot, 15 fathoms. And you can see there, we get the hawse pipe there on the left going through our ground tackle, our riding pawl, our chain stopper, to the Wildcat, down the spill pipe into the chain locker. We don't anchor a ton here on Mackinaw, but it is a skill that we are required to be proficient at. So we will anchor from time to time to ensure that we're able to do so. In an emergency, dropping the hook is a great way to help stabilize the situation. Moving right along, this is our small boat right now as we take to the next slide. You'll notice about the small boat, we do have a small davit arm on board. That's because this is our 8-ton small boat. We will actually use this boat to go service some of our smaller aids to navigation. We call them foamies. Those little foam buoys typically have a pretty light sinker. Doesn't take a lot to hold those in place. We were able to work some of those buoys with the 8-ton boat. You'll also notice we've got our blue light there up on the superstructure of the small boat. That is obviously for when we are performing law enforcement activities. Moving right along, some more deck equipment we've got back there. The next picture is of our mooring winches. This is another thing that is unique to the Mackinaw in comparison to other Coast Guard cutters. Other cutters use Norwegian steam or a bunch of crew members to tie up the ship, whereas here on board the Coast Guard Cutter Mackinaw, we are fortunate to have some mechanical means to assist us in reeling in the ship. It makes the mooring evolution a whole lot safer, because if we do get a line over and the wind shifts or we get blown off, or we have the casualty lose propulsion, these winches can help us reel the ship in and bring her alongside safely. You'll see there we've got the working side with only a few wraps, and then the storage side over on the right there. The next picture is just looking forward from the fantail of Mackinaw. On the port side there, you've got our 8-ton boat again. And I just want to draw your attention kind of center of the frame up at the top. It's got those 2 windows looking down. That is we call that the after con. We actually have a very small navigation bridge that faces aft that we are able to drive the ship astern, looking astern, if we are going to assist with direct assist in terms of ice breaking. We will sometimes utilize that. It's not often utilized, but it is a great tool that we have available to us if we want to really inch up close, if we really have to inch up close to the bow of one of these beset vessels to help free them. That is how we would do it. The next photo is just from the bridge of the ship looking forward. So you get another good look at our forecastle deck and the in-haul winch and the forward edge of the buoy deck here in our home port at Sheboygan. Something to notice, no ice right now here in Sheboygan. It's been a light year so far, so we've been waiting. Once that freezes up, we'll be out breaking through it. Our next picture here brings us down into the bowels of the ship. This is our main control. From here, this is where our engineering watchstanders utilize electronic means to monitor the engineering plant. Our engineer officer of the watch, as well as our journeyman engineer, will sit in here, and this is where they have access to turn on engines, turn off engines, adjust the load, shift fuel around, combat some casualties from here. And you'll also notice they have propulsion controls down here as well. So if the need arises, they would be able to control the motion of the ship down from main control. Moving along to the next slide, however, this is the navigation bridge. If we move along, this is where we will navigate the ship from. It is a large space. It spans from bridge wing to bridge wing, the full beam of the ship, all 58 feet. And in terms of other Coast Guard assets, it is a very large space. When you particularly compare our vessel to some older vessels, a 378 or a 270 that are some of our older ships, we navigate the ship from here. Just saw a quick question pop up. Loaded draft about 16 even 4.5, so we try to run at. We will drive the ship here from the navigation bridge. If we move right along here to the next slide, I'll show you a quick picture of our multifunctional display. In preparation for what might become paperless navigation, the NOAA has been looking into suspending paper charts now for a few years. Will they or won't they? I can't say, I'm not sure. But we do have 7 complete independent navigational ECTIS units, which do comply with the international regulation for going paperless that the merchant vessels are able to take advantage of. As of now, we still carry paper charts. We still maintain paper charts and maintain proficiency in paper chart navigation. But we are capable of making the transition if and or when that comes down the pipe. These multifunctional displays are able to display the ECTIS chart, a digital chart of the area, as well as we can shift it over to make it a radar display. We have 3 radar antennas on board, 2 up on our main mast, and we actually have 1 back aft as well. And those can be displayed on this screen as well. Moving to our next picture here, this is the next slide. This shows a look at the port bridge wing control station. And I want to draw your attention to the 3 gray-looking soda can things there on the left and center of the screen. Those are our controls. So the 2 that are oriented fore and aft there, one's on the left side and one's over on the console. Those are the units that we use to control the direction of the thrust. So those sticks spin through 360 degrees, and the Azipod units will match what is being ordered there. This is super helpful in terms of driving the boat. And one of the new changes that we made that I really like is we did pull that port side Azipod and put it over on the the port side there of the ship. So there's the gap in the middle for the operator to stand. They can look down. Look, if you turn around, you can't see it from this photo, but you got a good view back aft as well. So you have a really good position to navigate the ship from. That third control there, that is our bow thruster. That does not azimuth. That only goes port and starboard. And not super clear in this photo, but just above the bow thruster control, that is our dynamic positioning computer. That will actually slide out and occupy that space that right now you're looking down at the water from. And there's a joystick that's cut off in this photo, and that is how we will be able to navigate the ship using the dynamic positioning computer if we were going to be approaching a buoy or mooring up in a tight pier. That is how we would do that. And on the next slide here, I've got a picture of our most important, according to some people, instrument on board, our pucometer. This is what tells us how seasick we're going to be. If we start getting up into the 20-25 range, we know we got to put out the saltines and ginger ale down there on the mess deck. We do have a few people that get seasick, myself included, from time to time, although I do consider myself a real salty sailor. It does affect me from time to time. The next picture here shows the bridge team in action. This is typically what our navigation bridge looks like when we are navigating in close proximity to other vessels or to shoal water. In the foreground of that image, you've got Mr. O'Donnell. He is physically controlling the propulsion of the ship. And directly behind him with their arms folded, on the left there, that's our captain, Commander Saramgard. And next to her is the officer she relieved back in June, Commander Stone, as well as the other members of the bridge team in the background assisting with the navigation of the vessel. We will typically have this many people on our bridge assisting, with the navigation of the ship. Each of them has a unique, distinct job, and there are a couple of officers assigned to integrate that information to ensure that everybody on the bridge is fully aware of what is going on, so we maintain appropriate situational awareness and can effectively perform our mission. So as we move along to the next slide here, this is getting down to the tail end of my program. I just have a couple of final thoughts I want to share with you guys on this bland text-only screen. We are a unique vessel in the Coast Guard fleet. No other ship that the Coast Guard currently has uses azipod propulsion. There are a couple ships that use something similar to podded propulsion, but they do not use podded propulsion. We are the only vessel right now that does. And being a icebreaker / buoy tender here in the Great Lakes, it is a very rewarding assignment for our members due to the need in the future of icebreaker sailors in the Coast Guard. Our polar security cutters are in the process of being planned, and I believe a keel laying is going to be coming up here, if not in the next couple of months and within the year, I believe, for the next class of Coast Guard cutters that will also have an azipod component to them. So this is a very unique assignment for our members because we can get some good experience as the Coast Guard moves towards reclaiming sort of sovereignty over our polar waters, specifically up near Alaska. It is, however, a very feast or famine assignment here. And what I mean by that is we're either working very, very hard or we are in kind of a layup, standby, repair phase. Typically, we'll get going with ATON, Operation Fall Retrieve, late in November and through December, and we roll directly into ice breaking. A year like this, where it's light ice into January, we get a little bit of a respite, but typically this is not the case. Typically, we will finish up buoys and get right into breaking ice, and then once the ice is gone, we go right back out and replace all the buoys. But then we typically have, in the spring and summer, we'll be able to do some preventative maintenance. We'll be able to take some time off for the crew, and we'll be able to support some public affairs events like some festivals. And just what I want to leave you guys with, again, thank you for being with me here and thanks to the Army Corps for inviting me. Please wear your life jacket when you're out in the water, and make sure that you guys file a float plan with a friend or relative if you guys are going to get underway, just so that you have somebody that knows where you are, and in case you're overdue, we can get out after you in a timely manner. And always, 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 if you're going to have a kayak or a paddleboard, just put a label on there with your name and phone number in case it goes adrift, so that we can quickly get in touch with you. So we're not looking for you when you are not actually a person in the water. So thank you very much again, Miss Briggs. I really appreciate you inviting me here. I'm going to take a quick sip of water, and then when you're ready, you can ask me some questions, and I'll do my best to get through what I can.
Sure. Everyone, invite you to use that chat function to submit any questions you might have for Patrick. Meanwhile, I will just real quickly cover our visitor center status. We are currently closed at the Sioux Locks and in Duluth. We will not be reopening our visitor centers until we are able to comply with state and federal guidance and when local health conditions permit. Meanwhile, the park at the Sioux Locks is open from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., the main gate only. And then the Lake Superior Maritime Visitor Center is still doing vessel arrival departure announcements. They have a cell phone tour available outdoors. Their virtual online tour of the visitor center is available, and there is an online gift shop operated by the Lake Superior Marine Museum Association. And with that, let's see what we've had come in. I had one question for you, Patrick.
Sure.
I'm familiar with the demographics aboard a lot of our freighters on the Great Lakes. I'm wondering what the average age is of the crew of the Mackinaw, and I mean, are they coming from the Great Lakes region, or are they coming from all over the country?
Excuse me. Thanks for the question, Ms. Briggs. You did prepare me for this one yesterday, so I got the answer for you here. The average age is going to be somewhere in the late 20s for our members here, and the reason for that is while we do have a lot of experienced older members here on board, we also get our age pulled down by our junior members that just report from boot camp. Right out of high school, right around age 18 or 19. So the average age is around 28, 29, maybe 30. And then what was the second part of your question, Ms. Briggs? I apologize.
I was asking, do most of the crew members come from the Great Lakes region, or are they coming from all over the country?
So that's a great question, and the best answer I can give you is about 50-50. So the folks that we have a good number of people on board who have come to Mackinaw because they grew up around here. We got a lot of those people, a lot of those members on board who are here because they used to be here and they have now returned. But it's also an interesting assignment for some folks who, like myself, put this on my list of places I wanted to go because it looked like a cool opportunity. You know, one of the things for me in my career, not just in the Coast Guard, but going to sea, that's been super rewarding is all the places I've been able to go to that I just otherwise would not have had the opportunity to do so. You know, no disrespect to beautiful Sheboygan, but a kid growing up in coastal Massachusetts down around Cape Cod just doesn't think to come here. It's just not something that we grow up knowing about. It might not even exist in a lot of our minds. So I have been very fortunate to get to experience some of these cool places that just frankly wouldn't have crossed my mind if I hadn't had the opportunity that going to sea has given me.
Now, do a lot of the crew members request the Mackinaw, or do they end up there, or is it a mix?
For the most part, this is being a unique boat, and with the long periods of underway time in the winter, it's either at the top or the very bottom of people's preferences. To be honest with you, but this is also one of those places where coming from here, you're given a higher preference for your next assignment. vice somebody, say at Station Honolulu. They're going to be picking at the bottom of the barrel. That changes from time to time with how the Coast Guard does assignments. But yeah, typically people either really want to come here or they got sent here. But I know very few people that really don't like it. Like by and large, people are very pleased with the assignment here.
And
you always have a few folks that aren't happy, but by and large, most people are very pleased with the assignment and are happy to be here.
Okay. We had an interesting comment from Fred Stonehouse, who is saying it's a good admission about the lack of major sea assets ready to go during the Fitzgerald disaster. So that is a really interesting change.
Yeah,
implemented.
Yeah, so that was in a direct response to that. And, I don't have a lot of direct experience with how it was before that. I mean, I wasn't even a glimmer in my father's eye back when that happened. I'm only 25 years old, but yeah, the status quo, how they had been operating, that had worked until that point, was no longer working. So they decided to make a change. And, now we can expect here on Mackinac, anytime there's a big storm or a gale coming through, we'll be put on alert where, if it's just a low grade gale, hey, in 12 hours, got to get underway. If it looks like a real bad storm, hey, you got to be ready to get underway within 2 hours, all the way down to keep the engines running and get ready to go. So no, they've taken that pretty seriously here since that occurred. So I saw one just pop up. We do have a Facebook page. We're gonna share this on there at the end. So
okay. Tom was one of many people complimenting the presentation and thanking you for participating. And he is asking if you can recommend a source for more views of the Mackinaw at work, which maybe your Facebook page is a good place to see that.
Yeah. So yeah, we do have a Facebook page. That the name is a little wonky. It's U.S. Coast Guard Cutter Mackinaw, WLBB 30. A little bit long, a little bit out there. I took over as the admin this summer, and when it was made, I couldn't say, but we do try to make a post after we do something of note. So when we worked at Buoy, we did the Christmas tree ship. When we were interviewed by Up North Live News for our Christmas trees this year, that was all posted on the Facebook page. So if you are interested in Tom, I think it was his name, the Facebook page would be the place to find that.
And then Becky was commenting how much she loves the Christmas tree ship duty that the Mackinaw took on from Captain Sherman, who I think many of the boat nerds know is from the original Christmas tree ship, which was lost in Lake Michigan. And yep. She just wanted to let you know she's helped unload it at Navy Pier in Chicago over the past few years and really enjoyed the onboard tours.
Oh, that's awesome. No, that is one of the things that we really, yes, the Rouse Simmons, that went down 1912. We actually, we do a wreath ceremony at the site of the wreck on our way down. We get the crew out on the buoy deck, and we pay tribute to those guys and to all mariners that go down to the sea in ships and don't get a chance to make it back to port. We do really enjoy that, though. It's one of the things that I think I touched on it in the presentation, but being a ice-breaking ATON asset, we don't always get a chance to do that, direct interaction with the public. We're not the small boat station that's pulling inner tubers out of the water when they're 12 miles offshore. We could be, we sometimes are, but typically our only real interaction with the public is these big kind of events that we get to participate in. And what's great about the Christmas trees also is that it's not just a wasteful trip. We're not just burning fuel to go down there. We are working buoys all the way down there. We pull into Chicago, we drop them off, and we get back underway and we do some more work. It's really a great thing that we can literally just fit it right perfectly in to our operations. That's also why we load them on the stern instead of the buoy deck, because you got to keep the buoy deck clear for the aids.
And Fred is asking, he's curious whether you have been aboard the original Mackinaw, and if so, what your impression of her is without getting into technology comparison. And I'm going to confess, as a previous president of the Icebreaker Mackinaw Maritime Museum, who signed the GSA paperwork to receive the ship, I'm kind of interested too if you've been aboard the Big Mac, as we used to call it, and how it compares to what we called in all love and affection the Mini Mac.
The Mini Mac, yeah. So that's fun. That's interesting that you guys that we're the Mini Mac. For us, we call we refer to that as the old Mac, and we're I guess the new Mac. I mean, we don't really name ourselves, but unfortunately, I have not been able to get over there. I know they're pretty close to us over in Mackinaw City, but you know, for myself, and I don't know if they're doing tours right now with the COVID-19, but I know for myself, I have not attempted to do so, for my personal concerns for that. So if they are open, I haven't been, but it is on my list. As soon as I can, I definitely want to check it out.
I'm going to highly recommend it, because that vessel is another one-of-a-kind vessel in the U.S. Coast Guard. It was. So we had a unique one-of-a-kind vessel replaced by another unique one-of-a-kind vessel.
I'm really looking forward to it. Absolutely.
And we have a lot more people thanking you for the virtual tour that you've just provided, and some more people commenting about the Christmas tree ship.
Awesome. Yeah, I saw one question pop up, and if not, maybe I'm just thinking of it myself. But somebody asked about ice breaking capability.
Yep.
And it's kind of funny because traditional ice breaking capability is, you can break 28 inches going ahead at 10 knots, and you can break, 36 going ahead at 4 knots, and you can break, 48, 52 backing and ramming. Those are kind of like traditional ice breaking metrics, and those are close to accurate. Off the top of my head, I don't have the exact figures. But what's interesting about us is with those potted propulsion, that we can direct the flow of water, directly port and starboard, directly ahead, directly stern, any which way we want. We actually use the water and the propellers to chop up and to, agitate that ice. So we don't really know. I mean, the propellers and that throwing of water can do more than what the ship traditionally, like with a rudder, go ahead, back down, go ahead again. We can do more. How much more? I'm not sure off the top of my head, but I do know that we are the most capable asset for the Coast Guard on the Great Lakes.
And I will just add a comment. We've had a few people apologize having to arrive late, and I want to let them know that this program is being recorded, and it will be posted probably next week to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Detroit District Facebook page, and also to our YouTube channel, so you can check it out, because it has been a very great virtual tour of U.S. Coast Guard Cutter Mackinaw. Another person is asking, how long does someone serve on the Mackinaw? So how long of an assignment is it?
So it depends, and that's a tough answer to hear. But for which type of orders you received, who you are, what your rating is, or your position. So for myself, I am on 2-year orders. I reported this June. I will leave not this coming June, but the following June. And that's typical for your officer positions. I believe the commanding officer is here for 3 years. But not positive about that. And then the enlisted members can be here for anywhere from 2 years to, I'm pretty sure, like 4 years, depending upon if they're coming here as a first-class petty officer or if they're coming here as a seaman. Because those really junior guys, who advance quickly or go off to additional training could be here from anywhere from 2-3 months to 2-3 years. So it really does depend upon what's going on with the individual member. Also, if an enlisted member advances to the next higher pay grade, we're super happy for them. That's awesome for their career, and we're thrilled for their, moving up and getting that more leadership experience. But they're not going to keep a first class and a second class as assignment. They're going to move that first class off to a job more commensurate with their pay grade. So it really does depend upon a whole host of factors how long we have people aboard the Cutter Mackinaw.
Okay. So sounds like depending on how you like it, it's not long enough or it's too long.
Yeah, right. Depending on how many winter coats you have to buy.
Well, it looks like our questions are wrapping up, and I want to take a minute to promote our next Virtual Visitor Center program, which will be on the 21st of January. We'll have someone from the Minnesota DNR talking about the impact of the St. Louis River watershed. And I will also give you a teaser that in February, we're going to have 2 very interesting navigation-based programs, which will be featuring conversations and question and answer with a captain from Interlake Steamship Company and also one with a chief engineer from Interlake Steamship Company, who'll be sharing some stories about their careers and things that they have seen and experienced and their duties and responsibilities aboard the vessels. And as I had mentioned, this program is recorded and will be available on our YouTube channel. You can see that address right there, and I'm going to post that as well as the survey we invite everyone to fill out into the chat. So the first link there is the survey. The second one is our YouTube channel, where you can see this program and many others that we have recorded since beginning this episodes or this program in May. And thank you again, Patrick, for a really great view of the Coast Guard Cutter Mackinaw and giving us a real flavor of what it's like to live and work aboard this really super cool boat. And thank you, everyone who joined us today.
Thank you very much, Ms. Briggs. It was a pleasure to be with you. Semper Paratus.